There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Revelation. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. All right, so now we get to this last part of chapter 14, and now we see that John sees this white cloud, and on that cloud sat one, and it says, like the Son of Man, with a golden crown, with a sharp sickle in his right hand. All right, well, that obviously sounds like Jesus, because who else would be going around calling himself the Son of Man? The Son of Man was Jesus' favorite name for himself, and he's wearing a golden crown here. So wearing a golden crown means you're the king. But some people, they don't think this is Jesus. And their problem with this is they don't think that an angel would be telling Jesus what to do. Because it says another angel who came out of the temple telling this one, like the Son of Man, to thrust in his sickle because it's time to reap the harvest. They don't think an angel would talk to Jesus like that. But I have absolutely no problem with Jesus receiving instructions from an angel. And I don't really know how things work in heaven, but maybe the Father is telling this angel, saying, hey, can you go tell Jesus it's time? And I believe Jesus listens to me all the time, and I am nothing like an angel. So I kind of just don't think like those people. But then here it talks about that the time has come to reap and how the earth is ripe. And now this word ripe here, this doesn't mean like a piece of fruit that's ready to eat. The word that's used for ripe here, it means that it's overripe. So this fruit is shriveled and it's already rotting. So the world here is ripe for judgment. There is nothing good left on the earth. There is nothing more to be saved. It's all rotten. There is no fruit. And then Jesus thrusts in his sickle and the whole world is reaped. Okay, and so now another angel comes out of the temple, and this is the temple in heaven, and he also has a sharp sickle. And then another angel comes out, but he's not from the temple. He's from the altar, and he says that he has the power over fire. And this makes sense because that's what you do on altars. You burn things up. You burn offerings. So altars have fires. And this will make us think about those offerings, that were made on the altar, that were mixed with the prayers of the saints, the incense mixed with the prayers of the saints. And so this may be a response to all those prayers that were offered on the altar for righteous vindication and for judgment. And so now this angel from the temple yells over to the angel with the sickle, and he tells that angel with the sickle, and he says, thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, for the grapes are fully ripe. Well, now this picture of ripe fruit is different from the other picture of ripe fruit, because this is saying that these grapes, that these clusters from the vine, that they are big and bursting with juice. And so what this is now, this is going to be imagery that's describing the Battle of Armageddon, which we'll read about when we get to chapter 16 and chapter 19. And this is describing how great that destruction will be and how great of loss of life that will come from that battle and all of its carnage. And so this passage describes this battle as being grapes being thrown into God's winepress, and describing his wrath as the trampling out of these grapes. And then we're told of how much blood there's going to be. And it says that it's going to be up to the horse's bridle. Well, that is 4 feet. And then it says how long it's going to be, and it says 1,600 furlongs. Well, that's 180 miles long. And that's the whole length of Israel. And you might say, well, this is an exaggeration. but I don't think it is. I don't think it is an exaggeration. Because the Antichrist at the Battle of Armageddon, he will be coming up from the south with 200 million people. And all the other armies of the world, they're coming to meet each other up in Megiddo, which is where Armageddon is, to do battle with each other. And then when Jesus returns, instead of these armies doing battle with each other, they turn to fight Jesus. And so the way this looks is that when Jesus returns, that this battle starts up in Megiddo, up in the north of Israel, and it continues all the way down to those troops coming up from the south with this army of 200 million. That means it's going to be going all the way down to the Dead Sea at the very bottom of Israel in the south. And this would explain a passage that you read in Isaiah 63. Because you know, on one side of the Dead Sea is the nation of Edom, or the old nation of Edom. In this passage in Isaiah 63, it says, "Who is this who comes from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This one who is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red and your garments like one who treads the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the people no one was with me. For I have trodden them in my anger and trampled them in my fury. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have stained all my robes. For the day of the vengeance is in my heart, and the day of my redeemed has come. I looked, but there was no one to help, and I wondered that there was no one to uphold. Therefore my own arm brought salvation for me. I have trodden down the people in my anger, made them drunk in my fury. I brought down their strength to the earth." Okay, so now when I look at these passages, and then I look at how people, how they respond to something like this being read, and they're all thinking that, well, this kind of makes God out to be this kind of mean, vengeful God. And this isn't the Jesus that I believe in, because that's speaking about Jesus. But what you need to see here is that Jesus, he would have saved any of them. And he actually wanted to save them. The only one who's really being mean here is these people that have been killing all of God's people. And they would have killed Jesus again if they could have, because they attacked him. And you have to realize this is one short moment from all of creation. And it just lasts for just this brief time, because the time has come, because God, he has plans for his redeemed people. So if you don't know that you're redeemed, you need to make sure you are. You really don't want to find yourself on the wrong side of God. He loves you, and he really wants to save you. So we haven't met for a couple weeks in the book of Revelation. So we're going to do a quick review to help remind us of where we are and to see where we are going. So we started the book of Revelation with the Apostle John on the island of Patmos, where God revealed to John the things which must shortly take place. And then Jesus gives these messages to the 7 churches, telling them what they did well and what they fell short of, and how to correct themselves before he comes. And then in chapter 4, we no longer find the church on earth, and this is where we believe the rapture occurs. And then we saw heaven opened, and we saw the wonderful things that are found in heaven. And then when we get to chapter 5, we discover that the book of Revelation is divided into 3 sections of 7s. And it begins when Jesus takes the scroll, that title deed of the world. And as Jesus opens that scroll, the judgments of God's wrath begins to be poured upon the earth as Jesus reclaims the earth from Satan's control. And that's where we found on that scroll that Jesus was opening that first of the 3 sevens, and that was the 7 seals. And those 7 seals, as he opened those led us to the 7 trumpet judgments. And that's what takes us to where we are today, to these 7 bowls of God's wrath. And so the last time we met, we were in chapter 14, and we saw that description of the carnage of the Battle of Armageddon. But now here in chapter 15, John goes back to before the beginning of the battle to describe these judgments that will be poured out on the earth. And he does it in much more detail. So instead of a macro view of the end times, we're going to get a micro view. Because even though the book of Revelation, it follows an element of time, it is not a strictly chronological book in its arrangement. And so now we see that there's another sign in heaven, and it's these 7 angels with these 7 last plagues. And it says that in these, the wrath of God is complete. So up until now, when we read about God's wrath, it had always been that Greek word orge, which is a measured wrath, a wrath that's been built up over time. It's that kind of slow to anger wrath. But now here, the Greek word that's used is that word thermos, a hot-tempered wrath, where God's anger is going to flash hot. And then here where it says that it's complete, it means it is really over. And the Greek word used here is esteletheth, which means to reach its end. And so this is not just God going around blowing off some steam here. He is really finished. He is done. It is all over. There is no more wrath toward men. So I'm going to imagine that it feels really good to be done, because whenever I had to deal out any punishment, I was really glad when it was over. And either way, if I was either dealing the punishment out or if I was receiving it, I couldn't wait till the punishment was over. And now again here, we see the sea of glass. And I believe that this is the same sea of glass that we've seen before, where the 4 living creatures and the saints were standing there before the throne of God. But now this sea of glass is mixed with fire. And what that's thought to be is it's thought to be the judgment of God. And we've seen God in the Bible throughout described as being a consuming fire. And so you get this sense that this must be something very awesome to behold, because it's the sea of glass and now it's mixed with fire. And then to be looking at that as the floor that you're standing on. What I imagine is those vintage light bulbs that are kind of popular right now, where you see that the amber glow, but then you see this smooth, reflective glass. And maybe it's just all sparkling like the stars. And it doesn't say it here about these people that are standing. And it doesn't say about them, it doesn't say, well, here are those poor darn people who were defeated by the Antichrist. Oh, these are those poor victims that were murdered by the beast. But what it does say here, and it says it 3 times, that they defeated the Antichrist. That these people, they weren't victims, but they're all victors. They are heroes because they had victory over the beast. They had victory over the beast. They had victory over his mark and over the number of his name. And so it says they had victory over and over and over. And this is not unlike Jesus, like when he died on the cross. You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.